Hi, I'm Dr. Caroline Leaf, and welcome to my podcast, Cleaning Up the Mental Mess. Well, as you can see, I have a guest with me in the studio today, and I am really excited. Eli, welcome.
Thank
For
you.
all of you that don't already know, this is my son-in-law, Eli. He's married to my eldest daughter, Jessica, and we are very excited. We're sitting here looking kind of calm, but we're both extremely excited because Eli is about to be a father. I'm about to be a grandmother for the first time. You're literally expecting your baby like any minute now. I mean, it's like we could be called out of studio in, who knows?
Well, hopefully not. Hopefully not.
Hopefully not. So, well, Eli, welcome. I'm so pleased to be really looking forward to this interview.
Yeah, me too.
I'm very proud of you. I mean, Eli is amazing, but besides being an amazing son-in-law with incredible support to our family, he's brilliant. He's also written a book that I absolutely love about what Kobe left behind. It's about Kobe Bryant, and I mean, I'm not a sports fan at all. I don't watch basketball. I don't watch sport. But when Eli wrote this book and he asked me to read it and he asked me a few questions about it, I was engrossed straight away. I mean, I read this book and absolutely loved what Eli has written here. It's brilliant.
Thank you.
It's so well written.
Thank you.
And it's so interesting. And I never thought I'd say that about a book about sport. Mm-hmm. But it's not so much about sport, Eli. It's about the person and, what we can learn. And that's why I thought this is just so important to talk about this. So welcome and thank you again for coming on the show.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
Why did you write this book?
Well, it's a great question. So, growing up in LA, I was a huge Laker fan and a huge Kobe fan. But when he died, I was shocked to see the outpouring of grief and sorrow from around the world, from people from all walks of life. And so I asked myself, what is it that allowed him to become so revered and adored and admired despite all the mistakes he made and all the failures he had? And so I started doing deep research, and I discovered that, over his lifetime, he developed and learned a set of techniques and skills and habits that when you put them all together, they allowed him to transcend his past and become amazingly successful. And eventually I realized that these skill sets, these techniques, they're things that don't just apply to basketball, but they can help anybody become their best selves. And so once I put two and two together, I'm like, this is a story that the world needs to know because it can help us do so much more with what we're given and really just enhance our lives in just very special ways.
That's what I got when I was reading the book, because it really made me feel that it encouraged me, and it made me, I'm in this field of mental health and encouraging people, but there was just to see it attached to a story and to see that, how he overcame things. And, I found myself reading things even that you'd interviewed me about and thought, that's something I need to apply in my own life. And yes, I have applied that and I want to apply that. And so it motivated me, and I'm in this kind of field, to actually learn more about, what can we do and how stories can help us. And, you write so well. I mean, this is what really impressed me. And you write so well. It's so interesting. So I have so many questions, Eddie.
Sure.
So I wanted to start though. I'm going to kind of start with, Eddie interviewed me about the concept of reconceptualization and my neurocycle. And I mean, Eddie knows my work. He's been a consultant in our company and he does a lot with us. So him and I love to have long discussions, sometimes in the car when we're driving somewhere and the others are saying, hey, Eli, Caroline, concentrate on the road, and both of us are chattering away and ignoring them. So I'm actually, Eli, I'm going to kind of selfishly start with the section that you interviewed me on, because I loved how you did it. I mean, I read the words that you said, I said, and I thought, wow, I've said them so well. Well, otherwise, you just represented me really well.
Yes, I'm your secret speechwriter.
Yes, I tell you, it was fantastic. Well, Eli and I spent quite a lot of time talking about the concept of reconceptualization, and you have a really great passage in here, and you interviewed me, and you basically asked me about the reconceptualization. I don't know, do you want to read this or just talk about this little section? It's on page 217. I'm going to read the first paragraph.
Sure, go ahead.
I'm going to read the first paragraph where and Eddie asked me, but how does reconceptualization work? And it centers around a concept called multiple perspective advantage, according to Dr. Caroline Leaf, a leading neuroscientist and mental health researcher whose mind management technique, the neurocycle, contains reconceptualization at its core. Here's how she explains multiple perspective analysis in a nutshell. Now, I'm going to read this because you said it better than I said. After someone has had an emotional experience and its intensity has dissipated, there is still energy associated with that experience that can do good or harm to them, depending on how they perceive the experience. If they try to think about the experience from a different perspective, like the viewpoint of a third party, they can change the emotional energy associated with that experience so that it can drive them in the right direction instead of the wrong one. I mean, just that alone, let's talk about that. Why did that capture you? Because we said a lot when we were chatting and
Sure.
we were interviewing you.
Sure.
That really captured you because it's really fantastic how you captured that.
Sure. Thanks. So, it was really fascinating how some of the methods that you teach are kind of universal truths that other people, other high achievers have learned from themselves. So for Kobe Bryant, as I started to study him deeply, I recognized that through some of the adversities that he had experienced and some of the toxic energy that had come his way, he really did see, he even was quoted seeing it's like, it's just energy, everything's energy, whether it's somebody praising you or somebody condemning you, whether it's you making a mistake or some trauma happening to you, it's all energy. And he figured out that he could look at it from a different perspective and then process it in a way that it could be as fuel for him to drive him forward. So instead of him feeling beat down, he could convert it, and then now when he's going to the basketball game, he could take that and take that energy and take it with him to go in and dominate his opponent on the court. And it was just so fascinating because it's like then when nothing can hold you back because everything's energy, then you really are empowered to conquer everything. And then when bad things do happen to you, you can actually use those as stepping stones to your next victory. And so he really, and that's what's so fascinating about him is because, he had so many public failures, so many setbacks, and somehow he overcame all of them, it's like, how does that happen unless you have some sort of strategy that addresses whatever happened and uses it to get to your next success? So when I saw that what he was doing, and then it reminded me of what you're doing, I'm like, oh my gosh, there's a connection. One of many connections that I discovered in his life that I'm like totally aligns with what you teach and what you try and encourage your followers to use in their own lives.
I love that. And that whole energy thing is so valid, Eli, because every experience you have is, as you've heard me say so often, and my listeners have heard me and viewers have heard me, that every experience is wired into your mind, brain, body connection as a reality. It's not just some airy-fairy thing. It's a real protein tree-like structure in your brain. It's a change in your cells. It's a change in your mind. And it is energy. It's energy vibrations in those proteins in the brain. And if it's toxic, it does become this fireball of energy like a volcano, and it's going to go somewhere. So reconceptualization is harnessing that. So what I would, sorry, do you want to go ahead?
No.
So I'd love us to talk about a story, get something specific,
Sure.
or a few. What can
Sure.
you, how did you make that
Sure.
association? Tell us something specific,
Well,
maybe,
yeah, so there
or a couple of stories.
a few amazing stories. Like one story was when he was in high school, when he was in high school, one of the things that really was a challenge is he was the only player to jump from high school straight to the NBA who was not a center or a power forward. So when he made the decision, as a high school senior to skip college, he had so many people doubting him, so many people attacking him, saying, "No, you're going to fail. You're going to be forgotten. You're making a huge mistake." But he knew deep inside of himself that he had the skills to be a top tier player, coming out of high school. And so you had sports writers, you had fans, you had teammates all coming at him. And one sports writer basically said, "You know what? If he does this, he's going to go to the NBA. He's never going to be heard from again. And it's just going to be terrible." And his response to that was, as a high school senior, his response to that was, "Oh no, that's okay. I'm going to take that. I'm going to take that piece of what he said. I'm going to put it in my motivation bank, and I'm going to use that later." So he literally took whatever that toxic energy is and said, "Hey, next time I'm on the court and I'm facing a challenge, I'm going to remember that guy who said I can never make it. And I'm going to be like, okay, that gives me the motivation to go and prove them wrong and go and conquer whatever it is whatever it is that's in front of me. So he really just he even as a kid, he found ways to use all that and then transcend that. And I think the core of it is you have to already be confident in your own abilities. Obviously, if you're really emotionally distressed and don't really feel like you can do anything, then it's easy for people to rain on you and for that to bring you down. But if you figure out a way to develop confidence, and then someone comes down on you, if you've built that up inside of you, you can be like, hey, look, nothing they say can bring me down because they don't know me. They don't know how many hours, they don't know all the time, all the effort I put into being great at this thing. So now not only is what they're saying a waste of time for them, it's just even more valuable for me because proving them wrong will make my victory that much sweeter. So it's just a beautiful thing for me to actually have that as part of my psyche. When he retired in his last year as a Laker, he actually put out he had a long-standing relationship with Nike, and he put out a video, a commercial, which was kind of like his swan song to being a player. But it wasn't a commercial celebrating his heroic achievements and everybody like worshiping him. It was a commercial that showed him on the court, shooting the basketball, and showed just an arena full of people just yelling insults at him. Wow. They were saying, you suck, Kobe. I hate you. Da 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 da, from every part of the court, and then he just put his hand to his ear like he wanted more of that. He wanted more of the hate because it was just validation of his abilities. Because at the end of the day, the people who challenge, the people who try to be successful, the more successful you try to be, the more hate you're going to get. So he just saw it as like a blessing to get all of this toxic energy at him. Because not only was it validation and proof that he was going in the right direction, since he knew how to convert that, he actually enjoyed it. And so making this commercial about it was like the true frame of reference of like, yes, I love being hated, because I don't want it, but if it's there, I'm going to use it. So might as well just embrace it, just make it part of my identity.
That's amazing. So that ability to take, because energy is never lost. It's always, as you know yourself, you're an engineer. Yeah. It's always converted. It always goes from one form to the next. So that is a toxic energy, and he took that and he made it work for him. Instead of it being destructive, he had this ability to make it constructive. Yeah. And you kind of think Kobe Bryant, everyone loved him. I didn't even know he had that situation where people hated him. But I know he was kind of a bit difficult in his young days. He had a lot of issues
that did hold him back and prevented him from becoming as successful as he wanted to be. And that kind of set a lot of the groundwork for a lot of the negative energy to come his way, whether people said, you're too selfish, or you're too, you're too mean-spirited, or you're too demanding, or whatever. That did set the groundwork for people to really attack him. But because he found a way to transcend all of that and actually use that as fuel, then it turned from this hate into kind of a reverence at the end, where I would see, after he died, I would see, look at comments online, and people would say, I hated you so much when you were a player, but now I'm crying that you're gone, And it's just because he's just quite fascinating how he just converted all of whatever was happening, converted to something that could lift himself even higher and just show that, how you feel about me, you're gonna respect me because I'm going to, use all the energy to be the best.
So you said something very interesting there about how in his initial, and I read that in your book too, and he was kind of quite obstropolous. He was quite rude. He wasn't seen as having much empathy. Empathy is another theme you explore in the book, and I'd love you to talk about his early days and how that shift to empathy became very much a guiding force in his life.
Yeah, well, if you go back, so. One of the things that I try and elevate is, basketball fans, most basketball fans, recognize how Kobe Bryant was seen as a selfish player and very just, some people would say narcissistic, very, focused on his own success and pushing people out of the way. But a lot of that came from his childhood. And people forget how much your childhood does impact how you are as a person.
Yeah.
Because he was isolated as a kid, his parents were, he had to follow his NBA player dad from one city to another, and then in Italy where he didn't know anybody, didn't know the language, didn't know the culture, going from city to city with his family as his dad continued to play basketball. He had no social circle, he had no
normal
opportunity.
Sort of.
Yeah, he had normal child. He didn't have a normal childhood where he could really socialize with people his age and really learn how to share and how to lean on others and develop a community. So he was just focused on himself. I can't trust anybody by myself to be the best, and all I have is basketball. So the basketball is my identity, and anyone who tries to get in the way of that is the enemy. So, and so that's kind of, based on his past and things that he's even acknowledged, that's what led him to become this, at the beginning of his career, like seen as self-centered, seen as, just focused on getting everybody out of the way. And yeah, he had some success with that because he was so passionate about his sport. He did have some success. He had, with him and Shaq under Phil Jackson, 3-peat championships. It was amazing the accomplishments they had, but there was a lot of strife and toxic situations there between him and Shaq, between him and his coach, which ended up destroying the team. And so it wasn't until years later that he started to realize, okay, this isn't working. I'm now in the second half of my career. Shaq's gone. I don't know if I can make it to another championship. The people I have around me, I don't have any superstars on my team anymore. How am I going to win? Because I can't do it all by myself. I've realized I've scored more points than anybody. I've scored 81 points. I've dominated the league for years, but I can't win a championship because I can't do it all by myself. So I have to find another way. And his coach was really a big proponent of this idea of empathy and the fact that, one of the things that's important is that, especially as men, when we hear the term empathy, we think that it means, basically lying down and letting other people walk over you, or just giving people what they want when they throw a tantrum, and just, not speaking up and just being weak and, and that's not, if you want to be a pro athlete, that's not going to help you, at least if that's what you think empathy is. Then you're like, hey, I don't want to do that. I want to win. And that means that I have to be tough and not just be the Mr. Nice Guy that's just, placating everybody and being an enabler. But then if you back up and you realize empathy is just, the definition of empathy is just understanding other people's feelings, trying to understand what they're going through. And it doesn't reflect on what you should do with that understanding. And that's something that Kobe talked a lot about after he retired, is how empathy was the key for him in the second half of his career. It's because then he realized, hey, it means that I should look at each person as an individual and not use a one-size-fits-all approach and see, okay, this player, they're struggling in a certain way. Based on what their issues are and what they're going through, I should give them more space to fail and kind of use a more gentle touch with them. Well, this other person, I know that person does like confrontation. They're more receptive to a challenge. So I should be tougher with them and push them more significantly so that I can help them rise to the next level. And so by using a different technique that's tailored to each person's mindset, identity, and where they are in the life, he was able to elevate all of them to a point where they could be their best when he was playing with them. And so then it wasn't just him being the best player on the court. It was about him leading the best team, because he'd figured out how to touch each of them in a specific way that brought the best out of them,
I love that. I love that when I read that in the book, and when we chatted about this, just that whole concept of our empathy shifted. And, often I talk about, people hear me on the show talk about this a lot, about how you show up isn't who you are. It's because of what's happened to you.
Sure.
And empathy is being able to recognize that the way another person shows up, even if it's offensive or aggressive or what we think is whatever, is to understand that that's not who they are. They're showing up like that because of. And he tuned into that. So that's when he shifted from, just be like what I want you to be.
Yes.
He shifted over to, okay, that person's showing up because that one of the players had lost a child, a
Yes.
stillborn SIDS, and another one had childhood eye cancer. So those things affect. And there's people that had early childhood trauma.
Yeah.
So every person is showing up with something. So he suddenly saw his team as humans with lives and experiences, and that's empathy.
Yeah.
And it was that tuning into the person and aligning with their pain experience that got the best out of them and shifted the Lakers to being incredible.
Yeah, it truly was. It truly was. I mean, that team in 2008, 2009, 2010 is still seen as like one of the most overachieving teams, because you had Pau Gasol, who is now just entered the Hall of Fame, but other than him, there was really nobody on that team that was like a all-star talent besides Kobe. But because of the way that he shifted his perspective in terms of how he treated his teammates and really following the leadership of his coach, Phil Jackson, who was all about empathy and all about how to connect with each player individually, then they were able to become greater than the sum of their parts and do what other teams with superstars were not able to do, which is be a cohesive unit and be kind of that one-mind approach to how do we achieve victory. So
love that. It's kind of like reminds you of Ted Lasso. It's almost like it's like the little lessons from Ted Lasso. I wonder if they didn't take some lessons from your book.
There is that one episode where he does, when he has his epiphany in the bar. It's when he's watching the Bulls.
Yes,
and learning about how Phil Jackson's triangle offense, which also is part of this, because that whole offensive strategy is about trusting each other.
Yeah, totally. That's the whole key.
So and then bringing that, and then you bring it out to soccer for his own success, but it goes, and that's the thing. It's like this is not just about sports though. It's about life. It's about learning how to trust each other and how to open up to each other so that you can get people to trust you. And that's one of the challenges that he also addressed in those later years. Is like, not only is it just not good enough to just say, hey, you do this because I did it. You be great because I'm great. Mm-hmm. What he started doing is being like, hey, let me open up. I've been so guarded all my life and protected all the things that, my personal stuff. Mm-hmm. Let me open up to you about the things that I dealt with. It was
fascinating, his stories. Mm-hmm.
Let me open up about the things that I dealt with and kind of expose myself and take off my armor so you can see all the scars that I have. And then you can see, hey, you have scars too. But those don't have to hold you back. They can actually be empowering for you as well. So that right there was created a deeper bond. Yeah, that vulnerability he showed his teammates created a deeper bond with them and allowed them to get to know him better and now trust that he was like them and that they could join forces in a deep way to achieve success. And then the results followed.
I love that. What is one of your favorite stories about him in terms of his vulnerability when he started opening up? I would say, well, to his team, I mean, there's a lot. Or anything about him.
I mean, there's so many stories. It's just quite fascinating. I would say that with his team, he talked about his relationships. He talked about even like his relationship with his family, about how he, having a fight with your wife or whatever and still being able to go to work.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, it was one of the things that underlined.
Yeah, something he mentioned in one of his interviews about that, and then actually dug deeper into that story, and it's just quite fascinating how he was willing to like reveal that part of what he had gone through and really still transcend all of that. So and then his documentary called Kobe Bryant's Muse was also very fascinating because at the end of it, near the end, he talks about the whole challenge of the assault accusation.
Oh yeah,
and how he and the rest, and how his life had been pretty much destroyed, but he had to recognize that it wasn't about him. It was about the mess that he created for everybody else, and part of it was for his own wife. And in Kobe Bryant's Muse, it was made in 2015, so this was years before all of that whole crisis had been included.
Yeah.
But he admitted in that documentary that the stress that he put on his wife, he believes, caused a miscarriage. And he said that he, even though he knows miscarriages are a common thing, that he still blames himself for what happened to his family and for his wife losing their child. So for him to come and say that on camera to a national audience is like a huge demonstration of like growth and humility.
Yeah.
And really, as much as people say, hey, you need to be tough, you need to, show everybody that you're strong. When you show signs of vulnerability,
that's strong.
When you show signs of vulnerability that are not forced, then that is strong. Exactly. You're strong enough to let people know how you felt. You're strong enough to show people your scars. That's the real strength.
It is a real strength. And it's that you said something very key in terms of just being a human, being alive, mental health, all these things. It's recognizing the impact of your behavior on others and taking that responsibility, and then not just being aware, but actually doing something about it. And he did that. He took a responsibility for the impact on his wife. He spoke about it. He tried to fix it. That's, I think, a very key lesson for everyone, that we need to recognize that all of us impact each other in positive ways, hopefully most of the time, but we do have negative impact on each other.
Yeah.
And it's to take that responsibility, and you can't change what's happened, but you can change what the whole thing looks like and how it plays out into the future of that relationship and those individuals. That's a key thing that I wonder, Eli, just as a slight aside in this is the conversation I've been having with a couple of people, is if this is not something that's become a bit of an issue in this current mental health climate, where we've veered between not talking about mental health to talking a lot about mental health, but the way we talk about mental health, the awareness of the impact of early childhood trauma and trauma and everything, if we've talked so much about it that we're just talking, almost like we're just taking off, but we're not flying the plane, we're crashing. I wonder if there isn't a little bit of not enough recognition of, hey, yes, that happened to me, but I'm also showing up in such a way, and I'm also impacting others, and it's not just about me, and I can't just put myself in a bubble. And I don't know, just a little bit of a thought.
No, I think that's a great question, and I feel like, yes, it's great that mental health is a bigger issue, but it only matters how you talk about it. And I do feel like a lot of the conversation is about how each person should feel like they are a victim. And yes, we've all victims in certain ways, and childhood things happen to us that we couldn't control. This is true, but there has to be more than just being a victim. And part of it is that something that you say, which is, it's not just about reacting to things. It's about how do you respond. You can still control how you respond to the things that happen to you. And again, going back to the whole idea of how Kobe responded to things happening to him, it goes back to, hey, I can change the future based on how I respond to the past.
That's so important.
Yeah. So exactly. So when people say, whether it's, especially things happening in your childhood, if decades and decades later, it's like at the end of the day, is what are you going to do about it? How are you going to either take whatever happened and turn it into something good for someone else? Or how are you going to go and try and fix the things that you can fix? And it goes back to, like I said, taking action. Talk therapy is great, but there has to be some action at the end of it to be able to transform where you are and get to a better place, so that your past is not like a burden on you, and a burden on others, and a burden on everybody else too.
Life is messy, and that's why this podcast is called Cleaning Up the Mental Mess, which is very appropriate, because life is messy. We all are messy. There is no normal brain, as per Yale study, as per the research. This means that we have to constantly be moving between the famous thing, or the thing that I say all the time, which is mind management. And I see throughout your book the elements of how Kobe did manage his mind, and I think that really seems to me what gripped you as well. All these elements of what he put into his mind management journey, things like empathy, things like reconceptualization, very fundamental processes that make you part of a community that can move forward. His being in the basketball community, being a father, being a husband, being an influencer on so many people's lives, and to the point where he's left a legacy. We don't necessarily have to remember Kobe, great basketball player, really not one of the nicest characters in the first half of his life. We don't really think of how he changed, and that's huge, isn't it?
Well,
that's
it is.
The legacy there.
It's really huge. I mean, again, going from being an LA native. I felt like, okay, Kobe and the Lakers, they were for me, because LA was synonymous with Kobe. I didn't realize that he was for everybody else too. And as I started doing the research for this book, I was just shocked at just how much he impacted women's sports, for example. It was quite fascinating. I mean, for somebody who's had so many challenges and has been such a controversial athlete, he's now known as like one of the strongest advocates for women's sports out of the entire NBA. Out of the entire NBA. So to the point where last year the WNBA created an award in his honor that they now give out every year to people who advocate for women's sports. And like, what does it say? It just blows my mind. There's so many people, so many female athletes that have been inspired by him
That's incredible.
that he's coached and mentored and reached out to, that are now like, whether it's Naomi Osaka in tennis, or whether it's top players in WNBA like Sabrina Ionescu or Jewel Lloyd. It's just quite fascinating. I think, there's one statement. The commissioner of the WNBA said in 2019 that only one NBA player came to talk to her, and that was Kobe. Out of the hundreds, only one player came to talk to her.
Wow.
And yes, he had his daughter Gianna, who was a huge fan of basketball and was becoming a great athlete as a teenager, and so that's motivation too. But at the end of the day, he decided that it wasn't just about helping my daughter. It was about helping women in general and giving back and trying to elevate their own ability to be great in their own way. So I was just really shocked about how he just, and that's why you said it's not like, people just remember him as a great player who did this and this, but there was so much more, and that's what led to everybody just being so devastated when he passed away, because like he was just getting started with how he was going to become even greater than all of his accomplishments on the basketball court.
Absolutely. He was going to become a person to transform people's lives, but his message...
It's still there.
It's there, and it's so fascinating that he went from being someone who was actually pretty isolated and self-involved to someone who became like the only NBA player to go and talk to that woman, for example.
Yes.
To the shift to empathy, to reconceptualizing his life. So, if you had to, and I know there's some other things that there's so much you highlight in this book, and I so recommend this book for everyone, because it's really, every time I talk to Eli about this, and you had this dream to talk, you've been talking for a while now about doing this book and talking about the ideas and talking about Kobe Bryant and putting it into a book form. This is something for everyone, even if you don't like sport. Like, I didn't particularly think I like sport, but the fascination of what I have learned from this book has been amazing. I mean, it's a fantastic book that I strongly recommend people get, because it's a beautiful story of transformation.
Yes.
That's really what it is,
Indeed.
Beautiful story of transformation, of taking the challenges of life and turning that into something that is very constructively helping others. And, for me, I wanted to ask you, and I don't know if you know this answer, reconceptualization and empathy were two key things that really hit you and in your search and your research. When did that shift happen in him? Was it a slow, gradual thing?
Well,
or was it a...
What
was the key?
Well, it's a challenge. So he knew, or well, rather, the part about reconceptualization was kind of always there internally, in terms of taking the attacks, taking the hate, taking all the toxic energy and turning it into something good for himself.
Childhood,
taking people saying he was no good and he would never make it, and such. That was something that he developed in childhood. In fact, there was an interesting story, and an interesting technique he used when he was in high school is when he came back when his parents returned from Italy to the United States after his father retired from basketball and he entered high school. He encountered a lot of disses from other basketball players in the Philadelphia area who were who were called themselves ballers, I'm from the hood, you're from Italy, you're Mr. preppy, pretty boy, you don't know what it's like to play street ball, get out of here, and so he faced a lot of that negative energy. And a technique that I really was intrigued by is he went to a basketball court with one of his friends. And he would have his friend kind of rebound the ball for him while he's shooting. And then he would have his friend stand on the sideline and start yelling slurs at him, yelling hateful remarks at him while he was shooting the basketball. Almost kind of like getting him used to that toxic energy. So So that when it did happen in real game, it would just be like, you can just brush it off, and it wasn't a big deal anymore. So he kind of practiced being immersed in a toxic environment that he can control. So it was something that he could actually be able to process effectively. So in terms of the reconceptualization, I think that was part of where he really developed that as a child.
So he developed that as a skill through his lifetime. And reconceptualization is looking at things through another lens and being able to see another perspective, that multiple perspective advantage. It's really a skill that will develop through your lifetime. And as soon as you've mastered it for one area of your life, then you've got more resilience. You unmask your natural resilience, which is what he was doing. And then as something else comes along that's totally different, you're not going to do it in exactly the same way, but you've trained yourself to look at whatever the situation is in a different way. And it really seems like that's something Kobe mastered. But it was a lifelong journey. So I'm very glad you emphasized that point, that this is not something, you don't just arrive with reconceptualization. It's an ongoing developmental process. But your resilience is constantly increasing with every reconceptualization that you make.
Indeed it is. There's another time, and that's a great point. It's like, and as a child, he kind of figured that out in that scenario. A few years later, when he joined the NBA, he was stuck on, he was just a rookie. He saw hardly any playing time. His coach felt like, well, we don't want to play you because you're too young, And so he got really depressed. In fact, he at one point, he kind of almost regretted jumping into the NBA because he felt like he was not being respected and like no one would give him a chance to prove himself. And interestingly enough, that rookie's year, he read autobiography of Jackie Robinson, the famous baseball player, the first black baseball player, and read about all the toxic hate that he faced when he joined the Major League Baseball, which was like 10 times worse than anything Kobe's faced. And so for him, he realized, oh, hey, what I'm doing with is not that bad. Instead of like just being bummed out that I'm not getting playing time, let me reconceptualize it in terms of, you know what? Well, anytime I'm on the court, I'm going to show everyone that I deserve to play. And I'm going to play my heart out. And by the end of the season, he proved to everyone that he really does deserve to be here. And it's because he instead of being bummed out, he saw, I should actually turn this into a chance to transcend and really prove myself. And that's what he did.
Oh, I love that. I really love that.
Yeah.
And then in terms of the empathy, when did that switch come? Because the reconceptualization was a lifelong journey.
Yes, the empathy was really after he lost, or after he and the Lakers lost the Celtics in the 2008 finals. He had, over the last year, he had kind of turned over a new leaf as a player and become more kind. He had shown more kindness to his teammates. But the problem was he did not, because he tried to show so much kindness, they weren't ready for a team that was going to be brutal and physical and going to knock them down, which is what the Celtics did. And so he was super frustrated. It's like, hey, when I'm tough on my team, they can't handle it. When I go easy on them, it's great, but then, then somebody else is tough on them, then they falter. So what do I do? Because none of these approaches are getting me the results I want. And that's when he went back to what, Phil Jackson had been teaching for years, which is, hey, let's look at each person differently.
Love it, individual.
And then it's like, okay, with this player, I should be tough on them because they need it. With this player, I should go easy on them. With this player, I should consider what's going on in their life in this case, so on and so forth. And that's when he realized that, it's not just about, let me be nice to everybody, or okay, let me yell at everybody. It's like, let me treat these people different about, according to the situation they're in and the experience they're having. And that's what really made the difference for them.
Wow, that's such an amazingly appropriate life principle too, because the whole concept of let me see you, let me understand you, and not put you into a category like everyone else. And that's why I'm so anti things like personality tests, because you aren't a type whatever, you're type you, and it's like that individuality that we need to recognize as individuals, and you build a person's self-identity like that. So no matter how they're showing up, you're still seeing that person's value and you're understanding and working around that. Obviously there's there's consequences and there's parameters, and they need to, train and all that kind of stuff. So there's the skill required, but it's that fundamental recognition of the humanity, the uniqueness of that person's humanity and who they are. And that was the key turning point in how they turned into an incredible team.
Yeah, it really was. It really was.
Yeah, it's such a life lesson.
Yeah, it's quite remarkable. And another thing that was just really great for me is that, like, after he retired, even a few years before he retired, his focus had transitioned from, you know, winning championships really to just teaching everybody else, hey, here, look, check out what I learned. Check out all the things that I discovered through my career. You guys need to know about this.
Wow,
you know,
it's almost like he had a sense of, like, urgency.
I don't know. I mean, I did write in the book, you know, it does feel like he wanted to get all of his secrets learnings out before it's too late. And he got enough out that it's filled up this book with amazing stories and so many words of wisdom from him, you know, that really just inspired me, myself. I mean, like, one thing that we haven't talked about is meditation, for example.
Yeah, why did you bring that up? Meditation.
So he, you know, he learned meditation from Phil Jackson, who was a big proponent of that. And for me, I've heard of meditation here and there, but I was never, like, gave it any much thought. I'm like, oh, there's just some new
woo-woo thing.
It was some woo-woo thing. I'm like, what? You just sit there? How are you supposed to think of nothing? That doesn't even make any sense. I'm just like, why am I wasting my time? I could be getting stuff done. But then when I started doing the study, I'm like, oh my goodness, he's really serious about this. You know, for the last 20 years of his life, he meditated like almost every day. And I'm like, okay, you know what, let me start trying this out. So I started doing, like, you know, 5 minutes in the morning. I would get up and just, like, you know, be in a quiet room and just try and focus on my breath and try and push away any distractions. And I found after a few weeks, I was like, when I would be in the workday in meetings that I usually sometimes are challenged at focusing on, like, my focus was so much better. I was able to more easily push distracting thoughts out of the way than before. And it really did feel like the meditation isn't just, it's like an exercise. It's like a mind exercise. So that's why I call it, like, it's a mind, like, it's exercising your mind muscle. So I describe in the book, because it's almost kind of like doing planking, but you're doing it in your head. So that way, when you are in a situation where you need to focus, it's a lot easier for you to do that because your brain's already used to that struggle. And so it's really helped me out in my daily life, just being able to be more focused with all the things that are going on, and be productive, you know, in the midst of so much craziness.
I love that. I love the way you handle the meditation in the book. And you and I have discussed this before, but essentially the meditation is aligning the mind-brain-body network, your psychoneurobiological network, and getting all the chemicals and the energy and all the electromagnetic waves and all the everything that's happening inside the different parts of the brain and the body. It's getting them calmed down. So your neurophysiology is in a state that's going to help you concentrate better. And as you say, it doesn't have to be long. It can just be a 2-minute thing. In my neurocycle, there's 2 to 3 minute meditations that you can do just to get that alignment. So it's brain preparation. It's mind, brain, body. Well, not just brain preparation. It's the whole psychoneurobiological network. It prepares and aligns it for moving forward and being more focused. So, and I think in this, every human battles with distraction, and you know, in this living in this age now where we've got access to so much information, our brain can get really wired up. And our brain wants that knowledge and wants that information, but a huge part of our ability to focus and concentrate and get the best out of ourselves is going to be able to learn how to control the neurophysiological reactions. And meditation is such a great tool for that. I love how you explained that in the book too.
It is. You know, one thing I was thinking about also, in addition to that, was go ahead. I wanted to find, what are you answering that I wanted to find? There was something I had highlighted that I wanted to just mention. You're focused on, your new book about kids, cleaning up your child, or helping child with their mental mess. There's another parallel that I didn't even mention, which is Kobe's relationship with his daughter Gianna, with all his children, on how he tried to help them as a father in a way that was, give them room to grow and be themselves. So one thing he said, like, for example, the visualization, which was a big thing for him. And in his line of children's books, that's been a big subject that he's shared with people who read those books and people who are involved in children's sports. When he was coaching his children's basketball team, I think he said each practice he would have them spend like 10 minutes of just imagination time. We would have them stand in front of the basket with the ball and just have them imagine whatever it is they want to imagine in terms of them playing sports and how they're going to succeed or how they're not going to succeed, And he said that, that so many kids are dropping out of sports because they're too rigid, they're too structured, there's too much pressure and too much stress. They don't just let their kids go out and have fun. And he said basically the best thing for kids' sports is for parents to just get out of the way and let kids be themselves, let them explore, let them discover, let them enjoy themselves in whatever sport that they're doing, instead of trying to force them to do things perfectly. So
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that because imagination is way that you re-energize the brain.
Yeah.
It's like literally plugging your cell phone in and charging your cell phone. So that visualization is doing that. It's recharging the brain, and your mind needs your brain in an optimal state in order for you to function at a higher level. So whether it's applied to sport or your work environment or academic environment or relationship or whatever, imagination is just absolutely one of the most powerful things that goes hand in hand with visualization. And I was actually turning to that section in the book. You talk about page 74. This is a little quote that you had. As a coach, I encourage my players to focus on visualization just as much as athleticism. Visualization combines concentration, imagination, and belief. Concentration is the ability to think about a single thing or task without external interruption. Imagination is the creative ability to see yourself in a wide range of situations and envisage how you'd navigate them. Belief is unshakable confidence in your own abilities. These qualities are crucial to success in sports. I absolutely love that. Do you want to unpack that paragraph a little bit and talk a little bit? I don't know if you need it in front of you.
No. Well,
you know it.
I mean, I know. Yeah, I do know. But yeah, this is something that he discussed in one of his articles that he wrote about visualization, and when it comes to teaching kids, like his daughter's basketball team. And it goes back to, it's, as he said, it's 3 steps. It's because imagination is great in and of itself, but it needs to have other supporting.
It's got to have the supporting structure.
So if you have concentration, if you actually are able to focus your mind on whatever it is you're thinking about, that's even better. For me personally, meditations help with that as well. And then the confidence, or as I talk about, the unshakable confidence in your abilities. So if you're thinking you're 5 foot tall and you're like, oh, I want to be a basketball player. That's not really it.
And I did play basketball, by the way, but it's kind of hard getting the.
I know. Yes. Yeah. Well, okay. As a kid, sure. But
as a kid, sure.
If I was like, I'm 5 foot tall, I'm going to join the NBA. Okay, that's a great idea. But I mean,
is it realistic?
How's it realistic? But if you have a confidence in your abilities that you've developed based on your skill set and on practicing and all of that, so if you have that confidence already, and then you combine that confidence with visualization, then great things can happen. Then that's where you can level up, because it's taking what's already there and then now allowing you to reach the next step and the next step. So him being able to really codify that in this paragraph is just super valuable.
It is. So what I'd love us to do, because this is such a great tip for people to bear in mind. And so it's 3 things that he puts together here. So just literally as a tip, when we talk about visualization, people often just think, oh, well, I've just got to visualize something and picture something. Yes, it is. But it combines, as you said, concentration, imagination, and belief. Yeah. So the ability to, and concentration is your ability to think about a single thing. Yeah. So here's the tip. So 3 things, guys, for visualization. First thing is concentration. Concentration is your ability to think about a single thing or a task without external interruption. Can you give an example of that?
Yeah. So one of the things that he's done, so if we're talking about
let's talk about the concentration.
Concentration,
think about a single thing or task without external interruption.
One of the things that I mentioned in another part of the book is how he used music to focus. So for everybody has their favorite music that can put you in a certain state, help you to focus on something. So that's one way that he would try. He has this whole idea of the Mamba mentality, or getting to his Black Mamba so-called alter ego, which would be, hey, putting us on a certain music, and then he's able to focus on what it is that he wants to do out there on the basketball court. So
find your little key. Yeah. And for him, it was music, and music therapy is an amazing thing. You also talk about, I loved how you talked about that in the book too. Yeah. And I'm a great proponent of that. And just as an aside, and we will come back to these 3 tips, is when I was working in schools and when I still practiced, Eli always had Baroque and classical music playing, because it does stimulate the focus and the concentration. Yeah. And I'd go into schools where kids would say, ew, that's yucky music. And then I'd say, well, just it's quietly in the background. time, if the music switched off, the kids would go and switch it on. And that was teenagers, young kids. I never had to control the music when it continued. They would want the music on. So it's incredible.
Indeed.
And there's a lot of research around that.
Indeed.
So find what helps you to get yourself into that state of concentration. But concentration is thinking about that one single thing that you want to focus on. So maybe it is that exam you're going to write, or it is that talk that you're going to have with someone, or it's in preparation for an interview. Like when I prepare for interviews, I focus on just that one thing and don't let anything else distract me.
Yeah.
And that's the first part of visualization. Then the second part is the imagination, which is your creative ability to basically see yourself. So it's that ability to see yourself in a situation. So for example, when I prepare for interviews, like preparing for this one, I'll concentrate on the book. I'll read the book. I'll look at the questions. I'll focus just on that soul. I get into it. I'll then visualize and imagine it. Then I start the visualization, which is, the imagination, imagining having the interview, talking, thinking of Kobe Bryant, thinking of as I read the book, the stories of, and seeing him and the pictures. And so seeing it in my mind's eye. So maybe I'll close my mind or whatever, my eyes or not. And then the third thing is that belief.
Yes.
And in this situation, I'm giving a silly example of preparing for an interview, but then I'm confident in my ability to interview and to get this information out, to give the best information to help people.
Absolutely.
So there's three elements there: concentration, imagination, and confidence.
Yeah.
And that's what visualization makes up. And you gave the example of how he got into a state of concentration using music therapy, and how meditation's also another skill that you can use. So there's a lot of tips here.
There's all things that they all connect together.
Connect together beautifully.
And that's the thing, is a lot of the things that he learned and the things that the skills that he adopted, they complement each other.
Totally.
And so, because like one is great, but it's only get you so far. But when you compare it with all these other things, then suddenly you have a superpower. You
have a superpower. So the superpower is made up of building all of those things. So if we summarize, reconceptualization was a huge thing. That was like really hit you, and that he developed throughout his life. The empathy was something he didn't have in the first half of his career and life, and he shifted, and that shifted the whole history of the Lakers game and the impact. And in doing that, combining those, he then started learning about meditation and music therapy, and adding those to his arsenal of mental health techniques. Because we often think of mental health as just dealing with the problem. Mental health is also growing you as a person to be an effective leader or part of your community, or just in dealing with the ups and downs of life. It's not necessarily just dealing with the problem.
Yeah, no, and that's the thing. It's like, if you wait until there's a problem, then you waited too long.
Exactly. Exactly. So it's being proactive.
It is being proactive. And that's for me, it's like, hey, I didn't start meditation because I was like depressed and I needed something to help myself. I'm like, no, this guy who's like one of the greatest athletes ever, he's doing it. And he's still doing it even after he retired. I'm like, okay, well, maybe I should be doing it too. And I'm already seeing some great results out of it. And so it's like, why wait to improve your life, especially when the things that you can do to do it they're not that hard.
No, it's being proactive, and it's getting, we all have a natural wired for love nature, which means that every single part of our psychoneurobiological network is geared for survival. And inside that is resilience. And resilience is what we naturally as humans have, but it has to be unmasked. So the kinds of things that you teach in your book are, and through these stories and these principles, are helping to unmask our natural resilience in a very proactive way.
Yeah.
So this book is a book for everyone, because it is a book that is proactively through stories of people's, and we love stories of people's lives. We love stories of heroes and people changing from being kind of mean to being incredible. We love that.
No, I know, and that's why I enjoyed writing this book so much, because it did reveal to me more about his stories, that it's not just that he was just a great person or a great player all the time and a cookie cutter hero. And it's not just
that no one can really aspire to, because it's only one of the few, and I can just admire.
But see, when people see people on TV, that's what they think. They either think, oh, they're just perfect, I'll never be like that,
exactly.
Or they resent them, or like, oh, person must be really horrible, whatever. Yeah. But it's actually not. It's neither of those. It's more nuance than that, and within the nuance, that's where the story is. Where we have the change, we have the transformation, where you have the redemption and dealing with challenges. That's where the story is, and there's so many stories that I discovered that like most people don't even know about, even Kobe fans, Laker fans, that like I've shared with them, and they're like, I had no idea he went through that, or I had no idea that happened to him, or I had no idea does this and this. And so that's why, like you said, I mean, it is a book for everybody. Now, being that it's about Kobe Bryant, it's a sports book, obviously it's going to be more likely that sports fans and usually men will pick up the book, which is okay, because it's kind of like in a way it's like a secret. It's a way to get mental health ideas to people who are not usually thinking about mental health. Exactly. So I think from that viewpoint, I'm really looking forward to people picking up this book and thinking that it's just like a book about Kobe, and then realizing, oh my goodness, there's a lot more about in here that I can use myself, and I can improve myself. And yeah, I'm not into all this. I don't really believe in all this mental health stuff, but Kobe's into it. Now I should get into it too. So I'm really excited about that.
Yeah, that's really great.
But on top of itself, it's the stories that anybody could embrace and be like, wow, I'm really fascinated that, this guy who I didn't even think about went through all of these things and did all of this. And yeah, I really learned something about it. So I think it's a book for everybody. Once they open the first page, they'll be like, oh, okay, there's something here for me. Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And what I like about it is you can actually jump around all over the book, and you can find stuff that's not, you can't always do that in a book. It's actually, you can kind of pick up anywhere and, I could learn something here and learn something there. Two more things I'd like to do before we end this interview. Yes. Tell me that you said there's stories that people I didn't even know that about Kobe. Can you pick one of those? Yeah. Just something that people don't know that really got you, or that you shared with others and they said, wow, I didn't even know that story. Yeah. What stands out to you? Yeah. Like the story about... Oh, gosh, I don't want to give too much of the book away, but... it's always good. You've got lots of stories in here. There are so many. The story about how he... I guess this is a good story. So one of the WNBA players that he ended up mentoring, she had a problem with dyslexia. So she really struggled to read. And he would help her out with her basketball skills and all of that. And then one day he sent her one of his first novel, first teen sports novel. And he's like, yeah, I'm going to be launching this soon. I would love you to read it. And the book's like 600 pages long. Wow. And so... Unless you wrote such long books. Well, that book is one of the longest books that he wrote. So he sent it to her, and she's like, she started opening and reading it, but she's just like, I can't do this. I hate reading because of my dyslexia. This sucks. And so she eventually confessed to him, hey, you know what, I appreciate this, but I don't think I can do this. And he's like, hey, look, I know, and that's why I wanted you to do this. I wanted you to face your fears. I love that. I wanted you to take this challenge, because there's really special things in this book about resilience and about, being able to transcend your challenges that I think you can really appreciate. And one of the other things that people don't know is that when Kobe was a child, he was also told that he had dyslexia. I didn't know that either. Yeah. He was also told that he had dyslexia, and that bumped him out as well. So he had that connection that he shared with that player and where she was like, it just blew her away. It had nothing to do with basketball, but it was just as motivating as any of his basketball skills that he shared with me. So that's a beautiful story. That's a beautiful story. So I think the other sort of thing I wanted to throw out there was that people could literally take their own stories, like your stories of your life, and just see, as you read through these things, just think of where you could maybe, your own story could be swapped out for Kobe's story, and how you could apply the empathy and the reconceptualization and the, where you could fit maybe meditation and the elements of visualization that we've spoken about, how they could fit that into their life. Absolutely. And it's a proactive book. It's a story of a man's life who's had huge impact on people and how he changed. And you've written it in a way that's encouraging people to be proactive about their own life, which is exactly what I'm trying to do with my latest book, which is helping children, help them, as you mentioned, helping a parent help their children clean up their own mental mess, learn the powers to tell, the skills to tell their own story in a very proactive way. And we can be so much more proactive about life, can't we, Eli? I mean, this is like such a skill. Speaking of which, there's one other story that I think is really fascinating. Okay, go for it. Tell us that story. So, because talk about his other passion, which was storytelling, and for those who don't know, for those who have kids, especially kids who are interested in sports, they should totally go out and get his sports-themed books, which are New York Times bestsellers. Yeah. And I've read some of them, and the way that he combines fantasy with sports, and
Beautiful.
it's just really fascinating, and kids will gobble it up. But how he developed his passion for storytelling, it happened when he was in high school. So one of the stories is that he had a homework assignment he had to do, which was to come up with a story that he had to teach the whole class in the creative writing assignment was to come up with a story that they were going to then read to a kindergarten class. And he totally forgot about the assignment. And he was like, the school day was starting. He's like, I got to come up with a story. I'm running out of time. And he came up with a story about kids and their clothes. Because he's like, how do I connect with kindergartners? I'm a high school student. I'm a basketball player. But I know a challenge I have is keeping my room clean. All my clothes are all over the place. I sweep them under the rug or under the bed. I hide them under the bed, and I don't put them in the laundry like I should. And so he came up with the story of how little kids, when they would be disobedient and hide their clothes under their bed, and then at night the clothes would come alive, and
that's so cute.
And then reach out from the bed and drag the kids down to their doom.
Oh my goodness!
Yes.
I'm sure the kindergartners were terrified of that.
So he told this story to the kindergarten class, and then he said that days later, his high school received letters from parents saying, "Oh, I don't know what happened to my kid, but his room's never been so clean.
I love it.
It's never been so clean."
That's a cute story.
So you can add that to your book about the mental mess.
That's a really great story. I'll have to use that again. Eli, this has been such a pleasure. I always love talking to you, and it's been a pleasure to share you with my audience. And
absolutely.
I really encourage that you go get this book. Where can they get the book?
They can get it right now on Amazon, or real easy way to find it is just go to www.whatkobeLeftBehind.com. That'll go straight to the Amazon page, and go order it. You can get it in hardcover, like this beautiful one here, paperback, or your ebook, and share it with everyone that you think could appreciate it. Yeah,
thank you so much for doing this, Eli. It's really a great thing, and it's thank you for coming on the podcast and sharing these.
It's my pleasure.
I've loved it, and I think this is such a great message that you have for everyone. It's beautiful. It's a great book, and thank you and congratulations.
No, thank you.
It's been so nice having you here.
Thank you.
Thank you everyone for joining us today, and I look forward to seeing you next time.